Good evening, good evening, good evening, everybody. This is Dr. Deborah D. Jenkins, your host for Black Talk Platform. Thank you for joining me and my special guest who will be with me when time permits every first Friday of the month at 7 p.m. We are live on Facebook, we are live on YouTube, we are live on Twitter, and we are now live on LinkedIn. And we're hoping that many will join us tonight because we are discussing something that every Black person in the United States should be quite concerned with. Anyway, my guest is none other than Pastor Anthony Davis. Welcome, Pastor. Welcome. Before I get too deep inside this whole discussion, how are you?
Doing very well. You know what it is. It's a pleasure to be on your show, on this platform. Very important conversation. So I can't miss this.
Thank you, man. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And let me tell you, he and I both know a whole heap, a lot of pastors. But I tell you, in terms of alignment with our thoughts about the liberation of our people, we are here. He and I are here, and that's why he will always have an invitation to be here. He doesn't even have an invitation for a specific time. He can say, Pastor, can we get on here and just do this? Yes, Pastor, you can, because that's how much I respect his ministry. You all don't know us. Most of you don't know us and how we do ministry. It is not what most people criticize about the church. Am I right, Pastor? It's not what we do. We roll up our sleeves and we take care of the people of God because we understand our call is not to gather for ourselves while our communities go lacking. And Pastor, I'm already getting heated because we're about to talk tonight about buck breaking the 2022 edition because it is unfolding in front of our eyes and we are not going to be quiet about it. We're not going to be quiet about it. It does come at some degree of risk for us to speak out. But guess what? And I was sharing with my class the other day, Pastor Davis, because someone actually brought up someone that no one ever mentions, because by mentioning that person in history, it can actually get them more than canceled. And I said and you know this story, I shared with that student, and he didn't mean any harm, but I shared with him the Dietrich Bonhoeffer story. And I'm going to share it with our audience really in short fashion. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he was a German theologian living here in the United States, enjoying the lap of luxury down at Union Theological Seminary, at Columbia University. He was just doing well. He was at teaching and preaching at Abyssinian Baptist Church. And we want to pause to send our condolences to the family of and the Abyssinian Baptist Church on the loss of a giant in ministry, the Reverend Dr. Calvin O. Butts, who passed away last week, and he was funeralized today. What another giant who did unusual ministry. He was a pastor, he was an activist, and he was an educator. All of the things that Pastor Davis and I are, but we remorse with his family and his church family during their time of mourning. But having said that, Dietrich Bonhoeffer was one who had an opportunity to just stay here and just chill. He had escaped the hands of oppression and murder taking place, specifically aimed at the Jewish population in Germany under the Hitler regime. So I took that opportunity to talk about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, how he said that if he did not go back, and this is just a paraphrase of from his cost of being a disciple, I believe, Pastor, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. He said, if I do not go back and try to do something to stop what's going on at the hands of Hitler, then once those people, the Jewish people who were being harmed in the Holocaust, are liberated, I'll have no part in it. In other words, if I keep quiet while they are being executed and murdered, if I keep quiet and if I stay here comfortable in the United States while they suffer, once they're liberated, because I know they will be, I will have no part in it because I will have lost my credibility and my voice to be able to speak upon it. So he goes back, he gathers with some his brother, sister-in-law, and others. Anybody, if I get any details wrong, put it in the chat if I'm wrong. Pastor, if I'm wrong, just correct me on the details. He goes over there, he involves himself in a plot to assassinate Hitler, they are caught, and then they are the ones who are subsequently executed.
Right.
Bonhoeffer and his colleagues, his brother and the others. So listen, as far as I see, and you can also correct me, Pastor, if I'm wrong. I see us as the only two pastors out here, at least in New York, out here saying something on behalf of what's happening to Kyrie Irving. And I remember pastors, when he first came into the league, different pastors, different Black leaders, plastering his face, pictures with him at his games all over the internet. Not just New York, anybody who knew him, he was quite accessible to them. Crickets now. Crickets now. And that's unacceptable to me. And so that's why we're talking about it, because we are talking about ever since Kanye West opened his mouth and said what he said. Now, let me do this disclaimer. I am not a rapper. I am not an entertainer. I am not an actress. I'm not in the entertainment field at all. So I am not one to sit here and question the validity of what he was saying. And basically, for me, Pastor Davis, all I heard him say is that the seat of power in Hollywood, in the entertainment industry, resides with Jewish people.
Yeah.
How is that anti-Semitic? Pastor Davis, help me understand, because I know I'm not the smartest person always, but I might be wrong about this. Can you weigh in on this, please?
Yeah. So, first of all, you are very smart, and yes, more than qualified to talk about this. But, but I'm glad. This is an important conversation because, and I was thinking exactly what you just said in terms of the crickets of Black leadership. And I was talking to a friend of mine today who is part of the Hebrew Israelite community,
Mm-hmm.
and I said I find that because the film that Kyrie shared on his platform and the book that the film is associated with or based upon is written and produced by somebody from the Hebrew Israelite community. And so I was asking my friend who's part of that community, where's the voice? And she said, well, within their ranks, they're talking about it. But I said, it's not, I don't hear it in the public discourse. Now I could be wrong, but I'm just saying from my observation,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard anyone say, let's stand with Kyrie,
Mm-hmm.
whether a leader from that community or someone to provide context. I haven't seen that. So again, it's crickets, not just amongst the Christian pastors, but even from that community, I don't feel there's the voice to stand with Kyrie and to, stand by the film, stand by the book, stand by some of the thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I subscribe to all tenets of the Hebrew Israelite faith. I'm just saying that there are elements that what Kyrie was talking about, or what Kanye was talking about, that we have to, think about, because there's some truth to what they're saying. The thing is that if you listen to Kyrie, I don't think his goal in sharing the movie was to promote anti-Semitism. I think his placing the movie on his platform was to provide information, a perspective,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think I'm not sure if he made that clear, but when we start hearing language about blacks versus Jew, it's a problem, because what Kyrie is saying and what the film is saying, which I watched the film, it's long,
Mm-hmm.
and I read the book,
Mm-hmm.
but what they're basically saying is that, you know, as far as the Jewish faith is concerned, the foundations of that include black people. That's just, if you read the Bible, that's the case, right? So we know that we're talking about an Afro-Asiatic people, right? Whether you're talking
Please,
about,
can you pause right there? Because most people, Pastor Davis, don't even know the definition of what a Semite is or Shemite is. Can you repeat what you just said, please?
right? So the if just read the Bible, a cursory read of the Bible, right? The Jewish people, or the Hebrews, are an Afro-Asiatic people. That's what they are. Meaning, when we talk about Abraham and where he's from, right? where we talk about the Ur of the Chaldeans and coming into the land of Canaan, even the land of Canaan itself. These are Asiatic people, Afro-Asiatic people, right? When we talk about going to Egypt and then the Exodus, if we believe in the historicity of that, right? A mixed multitude came out of Egypt along with the Hebrews, and they intermarried. Moses himself, it is said, married an Ethiopian woman. Um, there were Egyptians and Israelites who intermarried, right? So you're talking about a group of people that are Asiatics that are mixed with African people, and not just Egyptians, but Ethiopians and other types of people there. So and Hebrew itself is an Afro-Asiatic language.
Thank,
So
thank you.
yeah,
Because I'm so sorry. I don't mean to cut you
yeah,
off, but there's so much ignorance. I mean, ignorance is above 100%, if that's even
yeah,
possible, because there are these scripts that are clearly being given not only to white media people, but to black media people, and those people over on these sports channels. They are so embarrassing to me as a
yeah,
black woman. The way they have joined in the negative refrain against Kyrie Irving
yeah.
is just ridiculous. And I know for a fact, because of the way they are speaking, they don't know what you just said.
Right. Yeah. And so, but that perspective is never given. That again, these are Afro-Asiatics. If you look at the Bible, they're confused oftentimes. When you hear the story of Joseph and he's burying his father, his family, the people of his brothers, they're confused with being Egyptian, right? When they're lamenting and mourning the death of Jacob, right? So if we take all that to be true, um, we can make some we can some conclusions in regards to their ethnicity. Even when you get into the New Testament, right? Even the Apostle Paul is confused with being an Egyptian, right? In other words, these are dark-skinned people, brown-skinned people, African-looking people. Even when Paul was being arrested, a Greek or Roman soldier rather asked him, "Do you speak Greek?" If Paul was a white man, if he was Roman or if he was Greek, the Roman centurion would not ask Paul, "Hey, do you speak Greek?" He was uncertain, and then he said to Paul, "I thought you were this Egyptian who was sort of creating this uprising, right? That's who I thought you were." And
Mhm.
so Paul, being a Benjamite, was a dark-skinned man, a brown-skinned man. And we see this throughout the Bible. On the day of Pentecost, various Jews from all over, including African countries. This is, the Ethiopian eunuch is reading the book of Isaiah. It's all
Yeah,
there
yeah.
historically, if we look at the Bible, but just historically.
Mhm.
And so what Kyrie is saying by putting the film out there is, and the premise of the film is that you cannot, when he says, "I cannot be anti Semitic if I know who I am," people were offended by that statement.
Yeah,
He is saying that I'm a part of this diaspora, I'm
yeah.
part of this community. My ancestors are a part of this community. Those are facts.
Mhm.
And so, even with captivity and the dispersion of the Jews, I am not going to say that the white Jews are not ethnically or Jews, or even from a DNA point of view. I think that can be somewhat proven. Okay, that's fine. You have white Jews. But what is not considered is the fact that there are black Jews,
Thank you.
right? And so
Thank you.
now, specifically, the Ethiopian Jews.
Mhm.
And so Ethiopians, let's look at their experience when it comes to being emigrating into Israel, because that there's this rule or this law that allows these Jews to come back to the homeland.
Mhm.
But when it came to them, who their DNA proves that they are Jewish. We're not
Right.
talking about some of the Jewish communities in Ghana that are questionable for some people, or in Nigeria and other places where they claim to be Jews, and they may very well be, but whatever litmus test, they haven't necessarily passed it. But we know for certain that these Ethiopians have passed whatever litmus test has been established, right? That
Right.
these are authentically Jews. However, their integration into the society in Israel has never been good.
Right.
They've never been authentically accepted as Jews. Even they were not granted full citizenship. I don't even think to this day that they all have it. They had to go through a conversion process, many of them, to actually become to be considered Jews, right? They had to, like, like they were not already ethnically and in terms of their practice Jews already. They had to go through like me converting, like a non-Jew converting to Judaism. They had to go through that process, which is an insult to them. And then they were in the periphery, in bad neighborhoods, bad areas. They weren't allowed to integrate into the good areas of the community, right? In addition to that, in the last couple of years, we've seen they've had their own Black Lives Matter protests happening in Israel as police are brutal with them as well, right? There's a disproportionate amount of police brutality when it comes to the Ethiopian community. They are socioeconomically marginalized and discriminated against. And the point is that these white Jews have anti-Black attitudes.
They do.
They don't view these Jews as authentic or part of the community.
And can I just say, you made a point that the Ethiopian Jews who have been more devout, let's say that, more devout than most who say that they are Jewish.
Right.
And for them to have to convert
to
a form of Judaism that they have not been keeping, pulled them away from their devotion to the true Torah.
Right.
Now, we also have a group of people, and I wanted to go back to something you said at the beginning also. We have a group of people from the United States who went over at the tail end of the 60s, the beginning of the 70s. Most of them went from Chicago and places like New York and DC, but mostly I believe from Chicago. They live in what's called the Village of Peace, and they Dimona, I believe that's what it's called. They were accepted by the Israeli, and I'm very careful to say Israeli. You know why? Because people believe that because that piece of land that we also know, and I also saw Hebrews to Negro. One of my friends actually knows Mr. Dalton, and she taught Only Love. I think you may have met.
I know of her. Yes, Only Love. Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure you all meet at some point. But she wrote this awesome book called prophetic
whirlwind.
Prophetic whirlwind.
Yeah.
She talks about the people of Dimona. She's been with the people of Dimona over there. So one of the problems, first of all, a couple of years ago, as you were referring back to, they were being evicted. Their citizenship was being revoked by Israel. Now, going over there, denouncing or renouncing their citizenship here in the United States, taking full ownership of their rightful place as Israelites in Israel. Guess what? The world doesn't know that Israel accepted them. Why? Because the claim is true. That's one thing, right? But a part of that acceptance came at a cost. Every Jewish person their children have to go and serve in the army. They have to. They just have to. But they also, in terms of their positioning, they are positioned near like an electrical plant. These people are vegan. They don't eat any meat, and they cook by the sun. It's really fascinating. There is a video. If anybody, at the risk of being called anti-Semitic, you might want to go and look up on Netflix, everybody, The Village of Peace. I believe that's the name of it. So Israelis mistreat people. We already know what's going on in Palestine. That's another show. That's not this show, because we're talking about Black right now, right? But the Israelis are not necessarily religious people. They have a claim that they want to hold on to, and that claim, they send their children over here. They enjoy dual citizenship in the United States. The problem with a Kyrie Irving or a Kanye West is that they are learning. We're all in a period of awakening. Even for you, Pastor, we don't just talk like this in our pulpits. We have been awakened and have embraced, because what we have been erroneously, in my opinion, and you might differ from me on this, we have been erroneously led to believe by the church that we were engrafted into this. No, this book that we call the Holy Bible was written for us. And it
and
includes
bias, right?
and
Yeah.
bias. It includes the Old Testament and the New Testament. But guess what was taken out in the 1800s, right after we became free people in the United States? The books that they like to call the apocryphal books, which I believe are fully a part of the document. Now, most people don't, you know, and I'm not saying Pastor David's audience does use the apocryphal, but it's I keep saying to the people at Faith at Work, it's real hard to understand every time you see something that there's no neither Greek or Jew, that type of thing, without understanding the Maccabean revolt. If you don't understand what the Maccabees, which were Hebrews, went through, why did they have to go through it, guys? They had to go through it because while they were under the Greek rule, or the
Hasmonean.
the Hasmonean, I'm probably wrong on that. I always get tongue tied in saying it, but they were right before the Romans. I'll put it like that.
Mm-hmm.
When Antiochus came into power, first thing he did was to try to consolidate that power. How do you consolidate power? You got to make sure that those who you lord over, or those who are under you, come into agreement with whatever your policies are. But guess what? And that's why when you all are reading the New Testament, you see the high priest, you really shouldn't be putting them way up here, because they were largely responsible for, guess what? The Sabbath day being taken from the Hebrews, the Jewish people. This was during the Maccabean revolt. And what also happened was they had to start eating foods that the Lord told them in his word not to eat. And they were also eating foods that were sacrificed to idols. That stuff is taboo.
Right.
And so Judas Maccabee was like, I don't care. No, we're going to go into battle because we're not going to bend the knee. And so if you don't understand what happened in the Maccabees, it's real hard when you get to Paul, who does understand this. And he says there's neither Greek or Jew, for you to really understand what he's talking about. So, but to the Israelites, to your friend who you were conversing with, it's not that the Israelite community, and I do share support for the Hebrew Israelite community. And that's like a misnomer, calling themselves Hebrew Israelites, because like same. But this is the Sabbath, and so but I'm more than positive if they're not talking about this tonight, they're talking about it through all of their lessons.
Yeah, no question. Yeah.
But what they don't do, like we do, they really don't do like press conferences, because what I've learned, they don't trust government, they don't trust the media. I don't trust the media, but they don't do that. So if you're gonna find them saying anything, it's gonna be like through social media. I'm telling you,
and I get that, and I'm saying that, but that may have to change, because again, the context of everything. So Kyrie is being bombarded or battered because of what he's done, but you have to give the context. And so when he says, I can't be anti-Semitic if I know who I am, he's saying that from a historical point of view, I am part of this community. And when we look at it, white Jews have always tried to shut down the idea that blacks are a part of Judaism and its legacy and its history. And so when we see how the Ethiopian Jews are treated, it shows their attitude and their disposition when it comes to that. And so when we look at even the other experiences of the Ethiopian Jews, that some of the women, when it came to them being injected with some type of birth control against their will, it affected their birth rate. They tried to control their birth rates, and the Israeli government confessed to this, that they were doing that. They did certain things so I mean, there's a lot of atrocities that Israel has done, anti-Black atrocities to their own Jewish people, right? And so what I'm saying is that these attitudes exist, and so the idea of Black Jews has always been there's always been adverse. They've always been against it, white Jews. And so Kyrie's trying to deal with that. Films like this try to deal with that, and that's the issue, right? They try to show that we are part of this history. So there's no one actually providing the context, right? So then when we think about some of the things that Kanye West has said in terms of their control, and they talk about being oppressed. And I'm not saying that they were not oppressed. I'm not saying that Hitler didn't do what he did. I'm not saying that there was no Holocaust, but I'm saying that Jews right now are 2.4% of the population here. We are 13% of the population. They are 30% of the billionaires that are in this country. 30%. How is that even remotely possible? You and I talked offline before we came on about how many of them own sports teams. I think that the New York Mets is owned by a Jewish person, right? I think his last name is Cohen. And so tons of teams are owned by them, or they do have power. They do have control in terms of Hollywood. We've seen it when you look at shows and the names of those who are producers and those who are whatever they are. They control a lot of that. And that's not being anti-Semitic to say that they are largely a part of that, of Hollywood, or part of the investment banking, or a part of whatever the industry is. But their net worth is something in the, like 4 times that of Black folks. So for all their oppression that they've dealt with, their net worth is 4 times that of ours, right? We are 13% of the population. We have less than 1% of the billionaires. How is it that they're 2.4% and they have 30% of the billionaires? And so they're not dealing with, as we talked about earlier, the police shootings. There's nobody shooting Jews like that. There's no in mass incarceration for them. There's no. We can talk about redlining. There's no federal housing act that's keeping them from owning homes, or the Homestead Act, or the GI Bills. They're not getting those things. They've been able to thrive, right? But what they've done is when Hitler, when the Holocaust happened, and before we get to that, my last name is Davis. Okay, that is a Jewish last name.
I never knew that.
How did I get a Jewish last name? My father's name is Melvin Davis. People think he's Jewish by his name, right? Last name is Davis. And so the reality is Jewish people, not all, but Jewish people owned slaves in the South. Those are facts. That is historical. They owned slaves in the South, right?
Yeah.
Jews in the South opposed integration. They were segregationists. Those are facts. You can look at that. There is documentation out there. Jews they can deny it all they want. They can say it's anti-Semitic. The Jewish community was largely part of the whole slavery thing in terms of profiting from it and engaging in it and participating in it, right? And so this is all documented stuff, right?
Oh, it's well documented.
Well documented, right? So any notion that they didn't do these things, that's just not true. So they were part of our horrible legacy of slavery. They owned us. I have a last name that testifies to that. And they were anti-integration. It was not until the time of Hitler and the Holocaust where they used that opportunity to latch themselves on to the Black struggle.
Talk about it, Pastor Davis. See, people on Twitter, they see me being vitriolic all the time. It's not vitriolic. These are facts. And I needed somebody to hear somebody other than me say the same stuff. Go on, Pastor Davis. I'm just like, look, go on. Just do it.
But I'm saying, like, and I want the audience to understand, it's not, some of this is going to be taken as anti-Semitic.
It's not.
It's not anti-Semitic. This is historical stuff. And it's not me just saying it. There are Jewish scholars that have written about this. This is not some Afrocentric scholarship or Afrocentric people writing this stuff. This is not propaganda. These are Jewish people who are writing about these things. And they have books and extensive things about this, right? And so this is the legacy. So they latched on to the civil rights movement, right? And they largely benefited from the movement of Black folks. Now, keep in mind, everything that Hitler did in terms of how he handled the Jews, the playbook he got was from America. That was the playbook.
Absolutely.
That was the playbook. To the race laws in America is what Hitler used to apply against the Jews. And so Jews realized that, and they had 6 million died in the Holocaust. And so in the aftermath of that, in when we now in the civil rights movement, they joined with us, and it benefited them, right? And that's what caused them to now use that opportunity to begin to thrive in America. So all the anti-discrimination laws that were in the works because of the black fight for civil rights, they took advantage of that. It's like when we talk about sometimes white women were largely won the day when it came to the civil rights movement. Like white women and Jewish people were the ones that got the benefits, whereas we didn't. Right. So we are, like I said, we're the ones that are marginalized. We're the ones that have been redlined. We're the ones that didn't get the housing loans. We're the ones that are fired from our jobs, and all the various things that we deal with, right? When it comes to unemployment, mass incarceration, drug uses, and even when it comes to incarceration rates, sentencing, all those things. Jewish people don't have to deal with any of those things, yet they'll talk about, anti-Semitism. What Kanye West said, it may have been inarticulate. He's dealing with those things. He may not have said it the right way, but those things are true. And so, to the point of really this show is that when Black men think and talk,
right,
and express themselves, we are not allowed to do it. You are quickly beaten back into your place. You are not allowed to think freely. Mm-hmm. And it's not even about, you're not allowed to, so what's the word, opine, or kind of reflect or look at these things, or have questions, or to engage in some kind of dialogical thing, or dialectical thing.
You're not able to do that.
Not able to do those things, and to question, right? And to look at the inconsistencies of things and deal with that.
Right.
So what happens is, soon as Kanye West says these things that we need to think about, I said to somebody, Black folk ain't got no power like that, because we don't control anything. The moment Kanye says something, he's a billionaire, and then one day later he's not.
Exactly.
No other Black folk can't make nobody not a billionaire in one day.
No.
there's no such recourse.
No, we don't have that kind of power.
That kind of power. So here's a man that can say something they perceive as anti-Semitic, and within a day, he could lose $2 billion within a day. And that is what we talk about, structural racism that is in place. The moment you are out of line and begin to no longer operate by the playbook, you are beaten back into submission and held and made to go, held in bay at bay, and made to get back to where you're supposed to be. And so now Kyrie Irving didn't say he was unapologetic. He did apologize. He tried to, placate them, or whatever the word is, tried to appease them. At the end of the day, he still stood on his principles to some extent, saying, I can't be anti-Semitic if I know who I am. They didn't like that.
They didn't like that. That wasn't enough.
That wasn't enough.
They had to really get him.
They had to get him. So 5 games he's suspended, no pay.
That wasn't enough.
Yeah, that's not enough. And it's still not enough for people. And they want him to be out the league. They want him to be out. Why is he still playing?
I mean, even the language of the owner of the Nets. He's not good for our organization. Yeah. He doesn't represent our organization. Yeah. Are you serious right now? Are you really, really serious right now? And so the argument has become, you're mad with him for posting a link. It wasn't even a link. You still got to go and search out this movie, right? He posted a picture of it. And anybody who's interested would have to go and find it on Netflix. Why aren't you mad at Jeff Bezos? Why aren't you mad at Netflix? So someone tweeted, which is why I love Twitter and this hit job that MSNBC is now trying to do on Twitter. I hope it doesn't work, because throughout the pandemic, companies like Pfizer and all of the, and I'm a Democrat, guys. I'm a registered Democrat. But you know what? When stuff stinks, you got to call that mess out. Because they don't like this guy, Elon Musk, I don't have an opinion about him. I just know that even the mainstream media, they go their breaking news to Twitter first. But now they're trying to get everybody to exit it. Watch all of the Black celebrities talking about, okay, I'm gone. No, I'm not going to be here anymore. They want their legions of followers to follow them off of Twitter to wherever else. I don't even know. Back to Facebook. No, thank you. To Instagram. What? Same difference, right? So they are not going after Jeff Bezos and Netflix. Why? Because he's in negotiations with the NBA to get rights to all of the games. We have to connect the dots. There is nothing that we should laud the NBA for in this situation. And even Kevin Durant, they're just trying to yoke up all the Black men. They're trying to break y'all down in front of your families. And for those of you who don't know what buck breaking was, it goes back to slavery time when nasty, disgusting slave owners, some of the ones that Pastor Davis was just talking about, they would disgustingly rape Black men in front of their sons, in front of their wives, especially, oh, don't let him have just been betrothed to someone. He would also rape her and he would rape him just to make sure the rest of the Negroes stayed in their place. And that's what's really happening with Kanye West going from billionaire status one day to non-billionaire status the next day. And that's what happened with Kyrie Irving because they beat him down, Pastor Davis. He did come back out and issue another apology after the 5-game suspension, after the $500,000 donation to the ADL, which parenthetically, let me say, the ADL, for those of you who don't know, that is an acronym for Anti-Defamation League. Their primary mission really is to stave off all hatred towards the Jewish community, but they include others in there. The problem with them including others in there is that you never ever actually see them including others in there. But I'm so glad for people like my sister Brooke right here, Brooke Sinclair. Please follow her on Twitter under the Blood Pact. Please put your link in there, Brooke, and I'll put it on the screen. She and her team, they have created, guess what? An anti-defamation league for guess who? Black people, because we're not being served by the ADL. And I actually tweeted to the Nets and to Kyrie Irving that perhaps since that money is supposed to be spread around, they should spread some to Brooks' organization because they are actually going through all 50 states looking for anti-Black hate crimes and anti-Black racism that occurs. So kudos to you, Brooke. Please drop your link in the comments so that I can put it on the screen. Listen, we are at a critical state. And for those, okay, so I posted something on Twitter yesterday, Pastor Davis. A simple tweet that said, stop telling Black men what to do, period. Right? So I was saying to Pastor Davis before we came live that I was working last night, and when I got out of class, I opened back up Twitter and I had a slew of anti-Black racist tweets tweeted at me. And then also white women telling me what the time, when there's a time to pull the race card, as if there's ever a time to pull the proverbial race card. But I also got a threat against my life. I believe your organization agreed with me, Brooke Sinclair, that was a threat. For those of you who follow the hip hop industry, you know that the industry lost one of probably the kind of good ones this week in the person known as Takeoff from the Migos. He was 1/3 of the Migos. He lost his life. So one of the tweets at me tweeted that I could just something like go and get Takeoff with this crap or something like that. I took it as anti-Blackness. I took it as a threat against my life because if you know, he was murdered by a gunshot, I believe, to his head. So this person wants someone to shoot me in the head for saying, leave Black men alone. But nobody of notoriety, I don't have notoriety. I'm not even seeking it. I do what I do in the community and for our community. But the ones with these huge platforms, all I've seen them doing is go after Kyrie Irving, go after Kanye West. And that's unacceptable, which is why I put that simple tweet that
Yeah.
got me all this hate. And I don't even know if Twitter's going to address it because, I mean, Elon Musk is firing everybody. He even fired like half of his folk. But what I won't ever do, Pastor Davis, I won't allow anybody to stop for me, to make me stop standing up for my husband, my son, you, your son, and all the other Black men who I care about and those I don't even know, because your voices matter to me. And sisters, listen, because I did have a couple of sisters come on that same tweet and say, and Black women too. Listen, ladies, if you want to know my track record, you can go and look at all the work I do around Black women. Black men have to have their say. And for us to come in and say, what about Black women? That's again disrespecting them. Can we just let them have their moment? Go on, Pastor. Go on. And then maybe you can answer Deacon Sandra's question there. Let Black men have their moment. Go on, Pastor. Have your moment.
I appreciate everything you just said, and I think what you're saying and the premise of this show is important. That we see it. We see with Kanye. We see with Kyrie and others that you're not allowed to think, and so it's becoming a problem. But to the question there, do you think that when someone talks about history that disturbs their narrative, they believe it's anti-Semitic? Of course. They do. Anytime that you, as you said, disturbs their narrative, because that's what we're talking about. It is a narrative that they have to maintain their position. And so we can't push back on it because, as I said earlier, Jews are very prosperous, and we talk about whether it's net worth, whether it's billionaires, whether it's, I think they did surveys to find out, in terms of well-being, how do they feel about their life, their outlook. The overwhelming majority of Jews in America feel very comfortable about their life. They have no worries. They do this stuff. They do these surveys. They analyze. Whereas if you survey Black folk, a lot of Black folk don't know what tomorrow is going to bring, because many of us are struggling out here, right? And so
Yes.
You can't question them because they have a place of power. They have a place where they're doing well, and they don't want that disrupted. And
Right.
they don't want you having any space, even within their community. That's why, even when we talk about the Ethiopian Jews, that they're so marginalized. This is a good question. Exactly how the Jewish Holocaust survivors got reparations on our land before the blueprint to their massacre got theirs. Our ADOCS Holocaust were the blueprint for the Jewish Holocaust. I had Jewish neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
and they were getting a check for their entire life, for the rest of their life. And it was a decent amount of money that they got reparations. And in Germany, there were like a museum dedicated to the Holocaust, and it was part of the curriculum. You can't even get critical race theory without pushback in America. Like you can't get reparations, and people don't understand that slave holders, people who own slaves, the federal government gave them reparations for losing their slaves.
Yeah.
Right. And then the land that was supposed to be allotted to you, the 40 acres and a mule, was given to white folks, right? You didn't get anything from that. Well, Jews can't say that. They did receive reparations. They did get land.
Yeah.
They get, how many billions of dollars do they get from America every single year?
Yeah.
Like something like $5 or $10 billion. I don't know what the number is that they get from America every single year. And it's not like some huge population, right? If you're getting, I don't know what the number is, if it's 5 or 10 billion, whatever the number is, $10 billion a year for their defense funding, right?
Yeah.
That's a whole lot of money. They are subsidized by the U.S. government, right? They're protected heavily.
that's why I know this is an aside, but that's why I am going after over the next 2 to 4 years, Lord sees fit to let me keep breathing, the Congressional Black Caucus. Because Pastor Davis, many of them, look at the ones that the APAC go after. Our former Congressman Jamal Bowman, they can't stand him. But guess who they don't go after? All the ones that are taking their money. You have to align yourself with their primary super PAC. Brooks Sinclair actually has a black super PAC too. I'm just giving you all your props, Brooke. But they they are totally entangled with our government, with our churches. I don't feel like, and this is no reflection on the ED, but the Interfaith Center does not serve us. It does not serve us. And it's just like the ADL. And that's why if there's to be any interfaith work, I don't personally feel it needs to be done through the Interfaith Center, because it does not serve us as Black people and our congregations. And brother Pastor Osiris, Dr. Osiris Inhotep said that we need to talk about the Black Hasidic Jews. Now I am concerned. I am curious as to the why the overtly Black Jewish community has not spoken out one way or the other. Is it that they're a part of that ideology from the white Jewish?
I don't know. I don't know about that. I just think that, I'm not sure if it's that. I think it may be being muted, or if they speak, there's repercussions. Even in Jesus's day, if they spoke out for Jesus, they were kicked out the synagogue or something like that, or whatever benefits they're not in position. And so I look at them in terms of power to be able to speak up. Right, they're muted, and I think they're more of a victim. Because even in Israel, the Ethiopians, it's the current generation that is speaking out. Right. I've heard that the younger generation said their parents didn't speak out. Gotcha. They accepted it for the very reasons that I just said, right? And so they were muted because they didn't have the power to. But this younger generation, they're just not having it. They're not, and not having it globally. And people have to understand that anti-Black racism is a global thing. It's in Brazil. Yes. It is in Mexico, right? It's in Iraq. There are Blacks in Iraq that are. This is a global phenomenon, and the African diaspora at some point has to become more unified, because these same issues are happening all over. But again, when we talk about Black men speaking out, right? I think part of it is, Kanye or Kyrie, they know in some sense intuitively something is wrong. They're clumsily saying the things that they want to say. It's just clumsy. They're correct in many things, but they're not articulate. It is imperative that the Black intelligentsia, the Black thinkers, we have to help shape the conversation. And I just find that somewhere along the line, we have to stop being bought, right? And I think that it's important that to help these Black men the way you want to, where we're talking about in the show, people who can articulate and contextualize these things have to be. So that means that journalists, like the NBA journalists, guys who I respect, were saying things that I couldn't believe. Black journalists, I was like, man, what are you talking about? That they were anti-Kyrie, like didn't give him anything, any content, nothing to help shape what he might be thinking, right? To help ease some of this. But they jumped right on the bandwagon. And to hear Shaquille O'Neal and Charles Barkley, they're not intellectuals per se, but to hear them again pounce on him, somewhere along the line, the Black thinkers have to now begin to be at the forefront and do this type of stuff. And that's what you and I have been talking about for a long time, in terms of whether it's the church or the intellectuals, the prophetic voice, whatever that is. We have to start being there to do this. And we can't be afraid. See, the thing is, for me to talk freely like this, and I have Jewish friends, and I'm not trying to offend
Yeah.
Jewish friends. I love these people. I have deep, good people who I would consider like family, like brothers, like people who I love. But I have to tell the truth, and sometimes
Yes.
I get concerned on a personal level because I wonder how my friends will feel about certain things. But I can't. I have too great a love for my community, right? And if I'm wrong, if somebody could prove me historically that I'm wrong, but if I'm saying these things, I'm not just saying it. I'm talking about I've read it, and I'm talking about from credible sources, not just black sources, but from uh, Jewish scholars who are talking about the things that we've been talking about on this platform today. These are facts. This is the
Yeah.
real deal. And black men are being silenced. But those of us who know how to put together 2 or 3 sentences, we have to begin to stand. Somebody should be standing up for Kawhi. We shouldn't be apologizing like Noriega. We shouldn't, because no one is apologizing when you talk all kind of other nonsense on that Drink Champs. I like Drink Champs, but there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of nonsense on that show that no one seems to have a problem with. Uh,
Wow.
so
To your friends, and I too, and I don't even want to. I mean, that's fine what you're saying, because they may be listening and they may misconstrue. But I want to bring up Shulamit Alani. She was the Israeli politician. She served as the Minister of Education. And that's why I always tell people, get off MSNBC, because clearly when I say anything about them, it's always criticism, because they are so sold out. I heard that politician who's running for governor or something, or Senate in Arizona. I don't care for her, but she actually got a zinger in when one of the MSNBC reporters came up to her a couple of months ago, and she said, MS MSDNC, because like Fox News, they are the voice of the Democratic Party, and the Democratic Party is not serving black people well. If you just look at the jobs numbers today, you will see that the group with the highest rate of unemployment remains black people. But yet, that's another criticism that they have for you all, for you black men, Pastor Davis. And a sister who was on an MSNBC news program lost her job today. But for the last 6 months, she's been doing nothing but criticizing black men. She's allowed herself to be a tool, an instrument of anti-blackness, specifically targeting black men. When
yeah.
she said a few months ago, you all, black men that is, you all need to get behind black women. And she said it with a bounce in her
You,
seat.
you, you know what's interesting about that black men vote for black vote for women in office at far greater rates than any other demographic. That's a fact. Black men ideologically are far more progressive than any other group of people. Black men vote Democrat second to black women at
Yeah,
a rate that is astonishing.
it is.
People act like black men don't do these things. Black men don't have a problem. If you look at it, they, like I said, they vote for women from an ideological point of view. They're far more progressive than any other group. They vote Democrat. They engage with their children. We know that more than
Oh,
any
yeah.
other group. Uh, Black men are not quite the monsters that people want to make them out to be. Um, and so I think a lot of it is people don't understand the structural element of racism. And we see it when we look at Kyrie and Kanye. That anytime a black, you talk about, what was it, use buck? What was the term that you use?
Breaking.
Buck breaking.
Breaking.
That's what happens. So here is a billionaire and a star basketball player are beaten into submission
Yep.
publicly in a
Yep.
public lynching in a I'm quoting, like, quote unquote,
Sure,
um,
sure.
on display. And so this is
Yep.
what happens. And so what you see is when you see Shaq or Barkley or these other writers or journalists or commentators, they fall in line. No one has any radical or thought. No one has a defense. Everybody falls right in line. because if you don't fall in line, you can lose your job, you can lose your brand, you could lose a lot of these things. And that's what happened. And that's just why Black leadership is so co-opted, because there's such money involved. And if you step outside of this, this is what happens. This is what made Malcolm X so very dangerous. Malcolm X was not paid for, but it cost Malcolm X his life.
Yeah.
This is the reality for Black men, that when you are unapologetic, like a Fred Hampton, this is what happens to you. And people don't understand. They need to look at this documentary that's also on Amazon on Martin Luther King Jr. in terms of what the federal government was doing to torment him in terms of his affairs that he was having, and how J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI were holding this over his head, right? All the information that they had on these extramarital affairs that he was having, trying to control him. And he was stressed out by that stuff, right? And so they were trying to stop him. This is what they do. This is what COINTELPRO is all about, to control, to keep what they call the rise of a Black messiah. So Black men, in order to survive, have to somehow break. Have
to be broken. And so while people are saying, well, they're millionaires, they're billionaires, I'm not talking about them. They're actually the catalyst being used to, guess what, break the rest of the brothers. It's historic.
Absolutely.
It is to break Pastor Davis. It is to break my husband. It is to break my young adult son and his baby son before he even gets started in this cruel world. And we're saying, leave Black men alone. Stop telling Black men what to do. And sisters, I need us to stop talking about how many Black men divest if we're not going to be able to stand with them when they need us most. We can't just want them to come and marry us. We have to prove also to them. And I know I sound like Sister Shahrazad Ali, and that's okay for me, because I think I was one of the only few in my age group who appreciated what she was saying. That in fact, she gave me a whole lot of insight into what the kind of woman I should be once I got married. And I don't think that, and I'm not Islamic, but you know what? I opened myself up to teachings from many. Dietrich Bonhoeffer's one of my favorites. There are many, I certainly, my absolute favorite is Dr. Amos Wilson. Most people know that. But we have to be able to stand with the Black man, because the world is against them. If the Black men, so that little tweet has like almost 5,000 likes, right? Just imagine taking out those trolls and those racists that responded to that one tweet. If there's 5,000 men, and it wasn't just men, but if it was 5,000 Black men saying, yes, sister, thank you, right? Their women, the women who love them, their daughters, their sisters, their mothers, their aunts. Imagine the multiplication and unity around that one statement. Stop telling Black men what to do. If we all galvanized around you, Pastor Davis, I don't think that type of leadership is coming from the church.
No. And that's and again, that's the thing. And, and that's really and it hasn't been coming from the church for a long time, which is why even when we talk about the civil rights movement and getting into the 60s, people were no longer looking to the church. They were looking to the Black Panther Party. They were looking to organizations like that, movements like that, people like that, the players of that time, right? But again, when we see how the federal government handled the Black Panther Party, it was just egregious how they pitted them against each other.
Oh yeah,
right. And so Eldridge Cleaver and I can't remember the main leader for the Black Panther Party. They pit them against each other, and you're right. So Huey Newton, they pitted them against each other, fabricating letters to each other, right? Making them think that they were against each other, right? And putting it in the media. And so that's what they do, and they do that today, right? They keep us at odds with each other. They keep us bumping heads with each other. But what I'm saying is that the Black Panther Party movement from at least when you look at the aesthetic of it, it's very powerful to see Black men, looking brave and
Oh,
looking,
mm-hmm.
yeah, organized and in control, and whether they were armed or not, but just the aesthetic of it was very powerful. They didn't want that.
They didn't want that.
So in Chicago, they went in. When we talk about Fred Hampton, they had no problem killing him. They had no problem shooting him in cold blood.
And guess what else, Pastor? They had no problem finding somebody who looked just like him
to do it.
To go
against and that's really, or to at least be a part of it. And that's the whole thing. But to do this work as a Black man, the way you and I are talking about doing it, it's a price to pay. And so both you and I were talking about, like, the way you started this is like looking at Dietrich Bonhoeffer as the example.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have that attitude that if I sit here and don't say nothing, you see, then I become complicit.
Yeah.
And neither you or I are looking to be complicit. We're looking to be a voice and to say certain things. Now, we're not just out here like Kanye and Kyrie without the work being done to read and to be well spoken about it.
Right.
But we're going to be prophetic, and what we're doing is prophetic in talking about these things. But it has to be put on the table. We have to talk about it. And we have to be that voice for the voiceless. Absolutely. And we have to be truth tellers, because I'm telling you, this anti-Black racism thing is not just in the American context. It is global. All these other countries that I talked about earlier, they're all dealing with it. They're all, it's a plight that we're all in. Yeah. And even,
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And even in Africa itself, I mean, what Africans are dealing with.
Oh yeah,
millions.
Absolutely. And when I think about, and I've already voted, so my mind is already made up, but there are many who still have to vote. And I think about this administration, and I know I've said this before, I'm so disappointed. Not that I had a lot of hopes, right? But I'm so disappointed because a sister was debating me about, I just tweeted something that somebody else have tweeted, and it wasn't even a lot of tweets over there are no tangible, no vote, but it wasn't even a no tangible, no vote. I don't know what that person had said at this point, but it made her think that the person's tweet and my retweet of it was saying I'm not voting. That would never be. First of all, in our community, how much we rely on our elected officials to do for our community what needs to be done. I would never sit out. And we have, in my opinion, the best state senator in the entire state. He shows up and he gives results to our community. So it's no way I would not go and cast a ballot for our senator. I think that's your state senator too, Pastor.
Yes.
But her thing was, no, we can't talk about this right now. There's too much at stake. We can't afford for the Republicans to get back into control. That is the very same thing we were told when Hillary Clinton lost against Donald Trump, that we can't afford to lose the presidency. This is what Black men are being told now, right? Down in Georgia, a very important race. I'm going to have my popcorn ready for the results on Tuesday, because I feel like that's probably the most important state right now. That's me personally. But how is the governor, when Black men are constantly going up to, and this is just an example, I'm not in Georgia, don't make a difference what I say, but how is it that clearly a racist governor like Brian Kemp can put in his schedule to meet with Black men, but Stacey Abrams couldn't? And when they asked her, because what's high on the list for Black men, at least a lot of Black men, is the economic condition.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
That's it. Yeah.
And then a lot of them are also concerned with what is it? Reparations. I don't know how I forgot that. I'm a big reparationist. And so they asked her about it, and her answer is no, right? So I don't know what Kemp said. I can't imagine him saying yes. But the point is, he took time to meet with the Black men, but yet Black men are being told, you got to vote for Stacey Abrams. Make it make sense. People vote for those who show them that they care about them. They're not just going to vote. Let me share, Pastor Davis. I know the time is drawing near, but let me share a couple of things. I was talking about Shulamite Alani, and she said she wanted to. She was on Democracy Now, my favorite source of non what do you call it, non-mainstream um,
Mhm.
news.
Right.
She was on with her back in 2002, and she said it is a game, a trick that they play. Whenever someone says in Israel, when someone says something that they don't like, they call them they bring up the Holocaust. But in here in the United States, if somebody says something that they don't like, the Jewish community that is, they say they're anti-Semitic. She said that. You all can look it up on Democracy Now back in 2002, August 2002. She's a Jewish person, like you were saying, and I was saying that because truth seekers will recognize truth and will say, let's sit down and talk about this, because I don't want you to be mad with me. I don't want you to hate my people. And I don't think you've said anything that's hateful. You have shared with us facts. And if your friends don't really understand that, it may be because they're not ready to accept the truth. Pastor, can you take over while I put my charger back in, please? Go on.
Like, I'm not sure what you
No, no,
I'll
you
wait.
can respond to
I'll wait.
anything. Okay.
You charge it, your phone got cut off or something? Your
My computer, my computer.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just go ahead and say that in regards to, I see that as I'm perusing through articles that are out here in terms of what black men voting, I think one of the things is that what seems to be largely said is that black men feel that their issues are ignored by politicians, and I
Period.
think
On
what you
both
said
sides.
I
Yeah.
think what you said about Stacey Abrams not willing to meet with black men, I think that's when you listen to men in certain spaces, that becomes a big issue, especially when we talk about the economic situation, because black men are largely dealing with that. They're dealing with unemployment, but you have to understand it's not just unemployment rates. It's also you're talking about uh, people who haven't been looking for a job for a long time. They're not even part of those numbers, right? So when we
Right.
talk about joblessness, a whole lot of black men are jobless, and then we talk about even those coming out of prison and their inability to find jobs. It's a lot of things that are happening that I think people don't understand, because even when we talk about wage earning, I think black women make slightly less than black men. And yes, there's a degree, there's an element of where black women are educated, and a black man with not as much education may make more money, slightly more. That does occur. But when you control for incarceration, which those numbers aren't really added to these income numbers and jobless rates or unemployment rates, when you control for that, factor that in, um, black women actually make more than black men when you add in the incarceration numbers, right? And
Right.
so black men are not making making it. They're not. There's aren't a whole lot of black men making six figures. There's a small percentage. I don't know if it's maybe 1 or 2% of our population making six figures, right? And a lot of times, people say, "Well, I want this sort of kind of man." Well, he doesn't exist.
Right.
he's not.
Might not be
He's
there.
he's not making that kind of money.
Yeah.
He is not getting the education. When we talk about where is the black boys at fourth grade, is he at eighth grade? What's his graduation rate? Uh, what's he doing in terms of higher education? He's not doing any of these things well. Black women are. They're progressing through fourth, eighth, 12th grade and into higher education. And black women are slowly becoming one of the more educated demographics in the US. Like, they're really moving ahead in this regards, right? And so that wage gap between black men and women is almost nothing. It's like a couple of $1,000s. But like I said, when you control for incarceration, it's really black women make more. That's why so many black women are, in this place of independence where they're doing well,
Mhm.
because black men largely are marginalized, right? And people act like, well, black men just have all these babies. They're just baby mamas all over the place. No, black men don't have any more babies
Right.
than white men, than Asian men, than
Right.
Hispanic men. They have the same amount of babies,
Yeah.
right? Um, And I'm just saying that, like I said earlier, black men vote are more apt to vote for a woman. They're more apt to have ideologies or that are consistent with being progressive and wanting women to have equal opportunity
Oh,
and
yeah,
things like that.
no doubt.
Family things that we all hold dear.
Right.
And when we talk about marriage, black men are more likely to be, when if married, and we do divorce and we're not married at a high rate, but those of us that marry, 88% of black men are married to black women, and even when he makes $100,000 or more, he's still 85% married to a black woman. We act like they get this money. They don't do that. That's not. I'm not saying that certain athletes we can point to, but I think the tropes that we put around black men are just not accurate. And so when you say things like "leave black men alone," we have to start to speak truthfully. I'm not saying you can't point to somebody everybody can point to somebody,
Yeah,
but overwhelmingly, when I think about my Facebook friends, just go down. A lot of these guys are good dudes just trying to make it and try to do the right thing.
sure.
Try to do the right thing with their women, try to do the right thing with their children, try to do the right thing with their community, and so on and so forth. Most black men try to make things happen for the good,
No
right?
doubt.
You
No
have
doubt.
some element of our community that engages in, like, less than 1% in violence and misogyny and things of that nature, right?
Right.
And yes, we could talk about the disproportionate amount of violence that black men commit against black women. That's a fact.
That is a fact. I was
That's a
talking
fact.
to our sister Dawn, Dawn Sneal about that 2 days ago.
Yeah, those are facts. But
Yeah,
what I've also there's a black women perpetuate a disproportionate amount of violence against black men compared to other women, right?
that's not
That's
spoken
not
about.
spoken of. So when
Mhm.
we talk about bidirectional violence, we would talk about even sexual assault, right? Because you say, well, black men disproportionately sexually assault women. That's a fact, undeniable. But when we talk about sexual assault, there's also, when we talk about made to penetrate violence, when we talk about uh, sexual assault in terms of black women and black boys, it's disproportionate, right?
Yes,
So it's not about uh, demonizing particular gender within our group. We have dysfunction that we have to deal with. A lot of it is because of white supremacy doing what it has done to us as a people. We are not in a natural element. Everything we do has to be looked at in the context of white supremacy. We are
absolutely.
dealing with this all the time, and it affects how we operate in a social sense, economic sense. That's why we socioeconomics, right? Everything about us is affected by white supremacy.
And
Um,
I wish we would remember that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
really wish we would remember that.
So it's important that when it comes to time to vote, it's important to listen to these men because they don't feel heard, and because they don't feel heard, there's a certain percentage peeling away, looking at conservative
Abs-
candidates.
Absolutely.
Because if somebody's willing to sit down and have a conversation, that means something. It doesn't mean that they rock with this guy. It just means that, hey, they're willing to listen, even when we talk about Ice Cube and conversations with Trump or whatever. They're looking to be heard, right?
Right.
And so when we say things, leave black men alone or listen to them, that should happen.
It should happen.
That should happen.
And
We need to
it
listen
shouldn't
together.
be a threat to
Yeah,
anyone.
yeah,
It shouldn't be a threat to anyone.
yeah.
To your point, I think that we also have to take into consideration the fact that, as I was talking about the jobs numbers today, and that even though there was more of a spike in Latino unemployment, we still lead all groups as Black people. And then, of course, if you further extrapolate those numbers, get into the weeds of those numbers and the number where the job growth was, there is intentional and deliberate employment discrimination against Black men.
Of course, yes.
Because if a Black man is able to take care of himself and his family, oh my goodness, any attempt for the Black man's back to be straightened
Yeah.
It's a threat against this white supremacy system under
Yeah.
which we all live.
Yeah.
And we get confused. They make us compete with each other. Well, what, you're making 25,000, husband, and I'm only making 20, or you're making 26,000, wife, and I'm only making 22. We need to just look at those numbers as a collective, as one, so that we can do for ourselves, our family, as a unit. But they, every opportunity that they have to pit us against each other, they do it, and they are being quite successful in a lot of different areas. Let me ask you something before we go, but let me also share. I wanted to share because you were talking about the younger people not looking to the church, and that's been like that for decades. There's a quite a few younger people follow me over on Twitter, and I don't know why, but whatever. This one brother out of Detroit. I really don't want to use his name because I'm in that mother protective mode, though I don't know him personally. He posted this morning on Twitter. He's out of Detroit, and he told me I could use his name, but I don't want to. I'm trying to keep targets off y'all back, you know. But he did put this up, and I love this because this is how young people are thinking. He said, "Black people, when are we gonna get fed up with being white supremacies, whipping boys and girls? When are we going to stand up like kings and queens and stop letting the money control and buck break us? We're definitely better than this. This has to stop." This is how learned, non-emotional black men are thinking. And when I say non-emotional, I'm not making references to anything. I think that as a people, sometimes we get caught up, men and women, in our emotions. And so we sort of react. But this is a well thought out tweet right here. He's saying, listen, we haven't always done it, but isn't this the time that we say enough is enough? We're not bending the knee to white supremacy. We're not going to allow money to rule the day. What do you think about that, Pastor Davis?
I mean, that's where it's at. I mean, that's where, and again, it's a generational thing. That younger generation is, and I commend them, because I'm like, man, I look at stuff that they say on social media, stuff that they say on TikTok, stuff that they say, like you just quoted. It's like, man, where are they getting this from? Like, where are they getting this? But I think a lot of it is the economic problems that we're talking about is hitting them harder.
Yeah. Yeah.
They don't see the futures that perhaps my parents might have seen, or the opportunities, uh, and I think for them it's a bleaker future, and for them, I think they feel that we've dropped the ball because
Absolutely.
we were too passive. But for them, when you talk about student loans, when you talk about job opportunities, when you're talking about income, when you're talking about job security, and the ability to live the so-called American dream, and to buy a house, and to have an opportunity to uh, build wealth, they don't see it.
They do.
And on top of that, when you see police brutality, when you see all the things that we're talking about as far as discrimination and being marginalized and kept back, they're tired. It's a lot. And I
Yeah.
think people don't understand that we are living in a time that's as bad for that generation as it was at any time
At
for
any time.
Black America. And I think we don't really realize it, because many of us in our age group, uh, we may be doing a little okay, or well enough, uh, that we don't feel as impacted by these types of issues, but they are.
We are.
They are. Yeah.
And let me, speaking to that, let me ask you, I don't know what your thoughts are on illegal immigration. I mean, some black people feel like no immigration. I don't take that line, but illegal immigration is actually hurting his group. It's hurting anybody trying to any black person, right? Because I don't know if you heard about the brother from Mali. He's only been here for like 3 months, I believe. He was
Mhm.
3 months. And guess what, Pastor Davis? He was killed at a in a job. I don't know if it was a fire. Was it a fire somewhere in Queens? Right? Did you hear about that?
I didn't hear that. No, I didn't hear that.
It just happened either yesterday or the day before. But he's only been here 3 months, Pastor Davis.
Mhm.
He has a job. Black unemployment is not taken into consideration. Blacks who are immigrating to the United States. It's taken into consideration largely us, right? Those who've been here. But he got a job after 3 months when some young black people and even older are not able to get jobs. And that is because there are laws and rules in each state, but definitely in New York, that allow them to work without being citizens. And I'm not talking about they came over here with that H visa. No, a lot of illegal immigrants are right here in our city. And he had a job with, within 3 months when many young black men are unemployed. Do you have any position on the illegal immigration? And I wanted to talk about, when I was talking about the disappointment with this president, is that he conveniently uses Trump era policies to marginalize black people. People don't know that United States has boots on the ground in Haiti. Mighty funny, he's sending Haitian migrants back. But Americans have gone over there. The military, rather, has gone over there, is in their country. Make that make sense. And it's just embarrassing that the Congressional Black Caucus says nothing when this president marginalizes black migrants versus those coming from Central and South America. Any thoughts on any of that?
Well, in terms of you were mentioning illegal immigration, my thoughts on that,
Yeah.
in terms of how it affects black folks. Well, you kind of said something that's interesting, like there's a two-part thing with that, because there's a social justice part where if people are immigrating or trying to immigrate someplace, whether legal or illegally, a lot of times it's because they're trying to make a better life.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand that, and I can support that. But the problem is that by being sometimes illegal, and illegal immigrants are useful to this country because they are cheap labor, right?
Cheap labor.
And so when they are hired as cheap laborers, it takes away jobs for black folk here, right? That's what happens. And so there's certain jobs that you don't get, and the wages are driven down. And so they become a problem. That's why oftentimes there could be some tension, right? When we talk about, and a lot of illegal immigrants, or they can take advantage of, my wife works for the federal government, and a lot of these people get benefits. As illegal immigrants, we pay taxes, and they get benefits that a lot of times black folks don't get.
Right.
And so there's a part of that that's a problem. So I understand some of the conservative point of view against some of that, but then I can understand my more liberal side in terms of wanting to see these people who are people of color have a better life. But there's a lot. I think really immigration has to be done legally. It has to be done the right way. And I think really black folk on a whole have to be done right by the federal government. I think that's what it is. And we have not, we need to make the federal government prioritize our agenda.
Absolutely.
We have to do that. We have to do that. And I think that would eliminate a lot of this. And to do that, we really have to, and I said this earlier, the black folks have to see the struggle globally. You have to see it, of course, us as Americans, black Americans, and our struggle, but we also have to bring to light the things that are happening to black folks globally. We started off talking about the stuff that was going on in Israel for black people in Israel. It's the same stuff, the same exact stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So we have to bring light that these are anti-black attitudes that white folks have. It's not just black folks being shiftless and lazy, because I can't believe all these people around the globe are just shiftless and lazy and don't want to do right and are inherently criminals.
In fact, history bears out that we're actually the hardest working people because we've been made to work hard. We don't know not to work hard.
Yeah. And so, so again, we really have to take this information that we're talking about and stop being fragmented. But to do that, Again, the people who can think, not to say that Kanye, Kyrie, or any other average person can't think, they can, but those that can really articulate these points from a social justice point of view. And like, I always look at Malcolm X. Malcolm X did that.
Yeah.
He was able to make, he was very eloquent, but yet very plain. And we need the voice, the prophetic voice, to be able to talk about these things and hold people accountable.
Yeah, I totally agree. But we'll tolerate. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just put up what Pastor put up there. But I want to, as we get ready to close out, Pastor Davis, this has been really rich, and I appreciate you being willing to push back on this notion of anti-Semitism for telling the truth. And you brought receipts. But it's and so, like you said, those two gentlemen, Kyrie Irving and Kanye West, may have been clumsy in the way that it rolled out. And while I'm talking, I want to give a shout out. I put it on my Facebook. Shout out to Mr. Jay Morrison, because he basically said the same exact thing that Pastor Davis said. He said they may not be the right messengers, but the message was correct. And there's no reason for you to ever, if you know who you are. And that's what I raised my children to know. If you know who you are, you okay with anybody else being who they are. That's the problem. People are not okay, or non-Black people are not okay with Black people, specifically Black men, because Black men, you have been designated by the Most High God to lead your families. And
Yeah.
if you actually get into right position and your family lets you lead them, game over.
Game over. Yeah.
Game over, But let me end on this, Pastor David. This has been so great. I don't know what's going to happen to bring us to our first conversation in December. I don't know. And people, please watch to see if we have to come back and do something else, because this is not something that can be prayed away. This is something that, like Pastor David says, need to be within the confines of Black thought leaders, not those people they love to hurl out on MSNBC, CNN, all of these mainstream networks. They are bought and paid for.
Yeah.
And some people who have like million followers on YouTube, he too is bought and paid for. I don't mention names, but you know who cussed me out earlier this year. Y'all know, some of y'all know. I'm not going to mention his name, but something closer to where Pastor Davis and I live happened yesterday, and we just found out about it today. Let me see if I can share it so I can read directly from it. This happened. Let me see if I can share it. Give me 1 second, Pastor, because I know Pastor Davis has to get out of here, and I want to go too. Let me see if I can get to. Okay, this right here. This happened today. I was tagged in this on Facebook by a friend. His father recently opened up a restaurant on what is worldwide known as City Island. That is the Bronx's Seaport Restaurant Row. It's called City Island in the Bronx. The name of the restaurant, Seafood Kings. And they received yesterday in the mail, this flyer right here. Look at this flyer, everybody. I'm not going to read it because it's offensive to me. But this is what they received. Not only did Seafood Kings receive this nasty, disgusting, this is what's really anti-Semitic, and it's also very much anti-Black.
Yeah.
A Jewish restaurant also received the same posting on City Island. It's called Archie's Lunch Bar, I believe. And then, of course, here, this Black establishment, Seafood Kings, they received this too. And so what they are doing is they're asking for people to come out and support them on the 12th, next Saturday, at their restaurant on City Island. I don't have the address, but let me tell you, when you go into City Island, it is the first restaurant on your left if you're driving. It's right across from the dock, from the docks. It's the first restaurant right next door to Dunkin' Donuts. You can't miss it. City Island is literally a strip. of restaurants with some housing, but the housing is really back into it. And I want to encourage people to come out next Saturday and stand with the Lilies as they have a press conference about this anti-black hatred. And I
Seafood
really,
King got some good food too. We've eaten there and we've
they're
met
good.
them and we like them. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And they're very nice
Very nice
people.
people. Yeah, yeah.
And there was a clip from Bronx News 12 today, Pastor, with Mr. Lilly, the father, the owner, Daryl Lilly. He's like, you know what? I'm going to keep going to the 10th degree. And I love it. But this is painful. He said, still in 2022, this is happening. So it's not just happening to other groups. Anti-black racism is also on the rise. You don't believe it? It was also trending today on Twitter. What I encourage highly for Mr. Lilly to do, and everybody else who's black who experiences any anti-black racism, especially here in New York City, please notify your local precinct. I hope that Mr. Lilly does that. Everybody I could call, I was calling today to let them know that this happened. I called our assemblyman, his team. I called, I was trying to find out which council person, and I found out, but I haven't reached out to her yet. They need the support next Saturday, November 12th at noon at Seafood Kings. They are having a gathering. They have been welcomed by most people on City Island, but we know that there is still that element that hates us.
Yep.
And they don't try to hide. And this shows us that they don't try to hide. Pastor, it's on my Facebook for you to share, please. And he wants you all to come out. Anybody who can come next Saturday at noon, please show up. And look, if it's got to just be the 3 pastors that are here, let it be us. But they need our support, and we need to show for each other and say that. And I'm not mad with the Jewish people for telling the NYPD, look, start catching these people who are harming us in these streets, because they are getting beat up, right? They show it all the time when it's happening. They're not showing what's happening to us. I don't think we're reporting it enough. And I think we need to, because our hate crimes are on the rise. They do have those statistics, but with this and others, they need to start reporting. Pastor Davis, thank you so much. I'm happy listening to you as a Black man speak tonight. I hope I gave you enough airtime so that you can share your heart. Yes. But you are welcome here anytime. It doesn't have to just be on a first Friday. I think that you are a leader chosen by the Most High for his people. And I think that maybe you, myself, and Dr. we can get together and try to plan something. And listen, when I say plan something, Pastor Davis knows how I do. I love planning and organizing stuff, but guess what? I also don't mind doing, getting in the background. If I can bring together with Pastor Davis and Pastor Imhotep together 1,000 Black men from all over the country or right here in New York, so that you all can start this dialogue. Not that we shouldn't be there, but I really want y'all to start talking, because you are chosen to lead us. And those women who are secure in themselves, they will let you do it, and they will be happy to follow. And that's really what I would love to facilitate for the brothers in any way I can. If they can get to New York, we can provide the meals and stuff like that. We can fundraise to make sure that they're taken care of. They can get to New York. We may even be able to find some place large enough that we can put up. It could be like a boot camp, so they can have cots in somebody's fellowship hall or something like that. If we can do that, I would love to see you all begin a movement of new thinkers, because those who are always carted out in front of us and called our leaders, they're not. It's the Pastor Davises, it's the Pastor Osiris and others. There are others, but I'm talking about these 2 who are here with me tonight. There are others, but if we can do that, I would be so happy to work with you all to try to do something like that. But on that note, I will end and let you have the last word tonight, Pastor Davis.
And you basically said it. Like, I think that's important what you just said in terms of a gathering or something where we can come together. And so if that's in your heart to do, I'm with you on that. And I think you're right. I think it's time for, people who are like-minded to let's make this happen. Let's be a voice. Let's not think that we're incapable or don't have enough of a platform or not enough yes, let's go, or not enough of visibility, we can do this.
We can do
So
this.
yeah.
And we just
Mhm.
have to plan it out so that we can actually get those thinkers. If this brother from Detroit wanted to come here and be amongst you guys, we can find a way to sponsor him. If he can get here, the rest we can actually do. And that's my talk, but we will talk about it offline, the three of us, and let's see if we can make this happen sometime next spring. If not, I don't think sooner. Let's plan it well. But Pastor, why don't you go on and close us out, because I stand unequivocally with Black men, and I don't want to be threatened. I don't want my life to be threatened. But at the same time, I'm not going to stop standing with you, because I've seen too many influential Black women turn against these two brothers, which you should know that means you all don't have a chance if they're turning against these brothers. And it has to be for the dinero. So
yeah. And so the only thing I'm gonna say and close out is be appreciative of you, because this is the space that you allow for this type of conversation, and to give a voice for Black people, but also to be supportive of Black men, and that is invaluable. It's a wonderful thing, and this is why whenever you say be a part of something, I'm here, because trust me, Black men have no problem following the leadership of Black women. I think you are one of the best leaders around, and so Black men are made better leaders when we can see people like you supporting us. That's the power of a support from a strong Black woman. That's you exemplify that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And to your lovely wife, Pastor Andrea, I love her and I love your children. And you, Pastor Osiris, we're going to do this. We'll all talk. We'll get this thing together, and we will present it to the community of brothers, and we're going to make this happen.
Make it
All
happen.
praises to the Most High. Have a wonderful weekend, brothers, and I hope to see you all at Seafood Kings next Saturday at noon. God bless everybody. Peace, everybody. Have a good evening.